The radio crackled with static as Senior Park Ranger Claire Winters sprinted through the moonlit forest. Her boots pounded against the dirt trail, each labored breath forming small clouds in the frigid mountain air. "Dispatch, this is Winters. Something attacked the North Ridge camp. Multiple casualties. I need immediate backup and medical evac." Only static answered. Claire glanced back over her shoulder, her flashlight beam dancing wildly through the trees. For a moment, the forest behind her looked empty. Then she saw it. A massive shape moved between two ancient pines with impossible grace for its size. In the brief sweep of her light, she caught glimpses of mismatched limbs, grotesquely stitched together, too long, too powerful, all wrong. Its skin was a patchwork of different textures and colors that had no business being on the same body. And its eyes, dear God, its eyes glowed with an unnatural blue-green luminescence, tracking her every movement. Claire had been a park ranger in these mountains for 15 years. She knew every predator, every dangerous animal that called this wilderness home. This thing was something else entirely. 20 years as a ranger, and she'd never run from anything in these woods, until tonight. The ranger station appeared ahead through the trees, its solar-powered lights a beacon of hope. Claire fumbled with her keys, hands slick with blood, not all of it hers, as she heard heavy footsteps crashing through the underbrush behind her. She slammed the door shut, throwing the deadbolt just as something massive collided with the exterior wall. The entire station shuddered. Framed maps crashed to the floor. Radio equipment slid from the desk. Another impact would splintered around the doorframe. Claire grabbed the shotgun from the locked cabinet, loading it with trembling hands. "What the hell are you?" she whispered. A third impact. The doorframe cracked. Outside, something inhaled deeply, audibly tasting the air. Then a voice came, but not quite a voice. It was as if multiple vocal cords were working together imperfectly. "Ren-gear." Claire backed away from the door, shotgun raised. On the monitor, behind her, the security feed from trail camera 16 flickered to life with its motion detection. The timestamp showed footage from 3 hours earlier. The grainy night vision video showed a camping site, 2 backpackers in sleeping bags. Then, movement at the edge of the frame. Claire couldn't look away as Frankenstein entered the campsite, its enormous frame moving with predatory intent. She watched in horror as it approached the first sleeping bag, head tilting with curious intelligence. Long, surgical scars were visible across its torso and limbs, places where different parts had been stitched together. The video cut out just as the camper awoke and screamed. A thunderous crash brought Claire back to her predicament as one of the station's windows exploded. Inward, a massive arm reached through parts human, parts something else, fingers elongated and tipped with claws that looked stripped from a bear. Claire fired the shotgun. The creature recoiled with a roar that echoed through the valley, a sound that contained both animal rage and human pain. For a moment, silence. Claire reached for the radio again. "This is Senior Ranger Winters at North Ridge Station. We have an extreme emergency situation. Unknown, hostile entity attacking personnel." I repeat, unknown hostile. The roof above her tore open like paper, moonlight pouring in through the new aperture. Claire looked up into those glowing eyes. Frankenstein clung to the roof, studying her with calculated intelligence that was far more terrifying than mindless aggression would have been. It dropped into the station with a grace that defied its bulk. Standing fully upright, it had to hunch to fit in the room. In the harsh fluorescent light, Claire saw it clearly for the first time. Frankenstein was a horrifying patchwork of human and animal parts, surgical scars forming web-like patterns across its frame. Its face was mostly human, but distorted, with a jaw that extended too far and teeth that belonged to no single species. The eyes glowed with what appeared to be bioluminescence. In one fluid motion, the creature snatched a shotgun from Claire's hands, crushing the barrel like aluminum. Claire backed against the wall as Frankenstein leaned forward, those glowing eyes just inches from her face. It inhaled deeply, as if memorizing her scent. Not yet. The words came from its mouth with unnatural precision. Then it was gone, crashing through the far wall of the station and disappearing into the dark forest, leaving Claire trembling in the wreckage. Over the damaged radio, through bursts of static, a voice finally answered her earlier calls. "Ranger? Winters, this is dispatch. We've received reports of unusual activity in your sector. A research team is being assembled to investigate. Dr. Marcus Harlow will be leading the response team, arriving tomorrow morning." Claire stared at the radio in disbelief. They knew, someone knew what this thing was, and they were coming for it. 2 days earlier, the morning sun bathed Black Ridge National Park in golden light, as a convoy of Forestry Service vehicles wound their way up the mountain road. Leading the procession was a rugged jeep driven by Claire Winters, her weathered ranger hat pulled low against the glare. Behind her followed 2 more vehicles, carrying the response team dispatched to investigate the unusual wildlife deaths reported throughout the eastern quadrant of the park over the past month. Claire had documented 17 mutilated deer, 11 elk, and various smaller mammals, all killed in ways that matched no known predator pattern. Claire parked at the ranger headquarters, a sturdy log building surrounded by towering pines. The team emerged from their vehicles, stretching after the 3-hour drive from the regional office. Dr. Ellie Kaplan, the lead wildlife biologist, approached Claire with an extended hand. "Senior Ranger Winters, I'm Dr. Kaplan. Thank you for flagging these incidents. The regional office has been tracking similar patterns in 3 other parks, but yours is by far the most concentrated." Claire shook her hand. "Just doing my job. Whatever is killing these animals isn't natural, and tourists are starting to notice." Dr. Marcus Harlow exited the 3rd vehicle, his pressed khakis and spotless hiking boots marking him as more accustomed to laboratories than wilderness. He carried a metal case handcuffed to his wrist, which seemed excessive for standard wildlife investigation equipment. "Dr. Harlow," Claire nodded toward him. "Your reputation precedes you. Bit unusual for the Department of Defense to send someone for wildlife deaths." Harlow smiled thinly. "Interagency cooperation, Ranger Winters. Nothing more. These days, we take potential disease vectors very seriously." The final member of the team approached from the 2nd vehicle. He was a tall man with copper skin and long black hair tied back in a neat braid. His ranger uniform had a different patch than Claire's, marking him from the Tribal Conservation Authority. "Joseph Blackhawk," he introduced himself. "Tribal Liaison. The eastern ridge where most kills have been found borders reservation land." Claire nodded respectfully. "Good to have you. Your knowledge of the area will be valuable." Joseph's expression remained serious. "My grandfather would say we shouldn't go to the Valley of Broken Stones. The elders have long believed it to be a place where the natural balance is thin." Dr. Harlow scoffed quietly, but said nothing. Claire led the team inside the headquarters, where she had assembled a map marking all incident locations with red pins. As you can see, the kills form a rough circle, with the highest concentration near this valley. The only access is by foot, about 6 miles of difficult terrain. Dr. Kaplan studied the map with professional interest. What makes these kills unusual beyond their location? Claire pulled out her tablet and displayed photos that made even the seasoned biologist flinch. The precision. Whatever did this used something sharper than claws or teeth, almost surgical in some cases. And there's this. She swiped to another image showing a deer carcass arranged with its limbs positioned in an unnatural, almost ritualistic pattern. Animals don't do that, Joseph said quietly. Exactly, Claire agreed. So either we have some very disturbed human visitors, or something else entirely. Dr. Harlow had been unusually quiet, examining the photos with clinical detachment. When did the first incident occur? 7 weeks ago, Claire answered. Right after the spring thaw. Something flickered across Harlow's face. Concern. Recognition. It vanished quickly behind professional composure. We should establish base camp at the eastern station, Claire continued. It will put us within hiking distance of the primary sites. We can head out first thing tomorrow morning. As the team dispersed to prepare equipment, Joseph approached Claire privately. My people have stories about the Valley of Broken Stones. Stories of times when something unnatural walked there. When I was a child, my grandfather told me that Valley was a place where nature should not be altered. Claire had worked with the local tribes long enough to respect their knowledge. Do you think there's a connection? Joseph looked out the window toward the distant mountains. The stories say that long ago, a medicine man tried to take power that wasn't his to take. He sought to combine animal spirits with his own. The result was abomination. And you think that's happening again? I think there are places where the membrane between worlds is thin. Places where certain actions can break something fundamental. Joseph turned to face her. 2 hunters from the reservation went missing near that valley last month. The tribal council requested an investigation, but the federal authorities said there was insufficient evidence of foul play. Claire frowned. That wasn't in any report I received. No, Joseph said. It wouldn't be. That evening, the team gathered around a campfire outside the eastern station. A smaller outpost consisting of 2 cabins nestled against the mountainside. The stars overhead were brilliant in the clear mountain air, untouched by light pollution. Dr. Kaplan was reviewing data on her tablet. The lab results from the samples you sent are puzzling, Claire. The saliva found on the wounds contains proteins that don't match any known predator. And there's something else. Traces of synthetic compounds that shouldn't be present in a wild animal. Claire looked up from the fire. Meaning whatever killed these animals might not be entirely natural. Dr. Harlow had been silently nursing a cup of coffee. At this, he stood abruptly. We should all get some rest. Tomorrow will be physically demanding. As the group disbanded toward their assigned bunks, Claire noticed Harlow making a call on a satellite phone, walking far enough away that his conversation couldn't be overheard. Joseph watched him too, his expression grim. He knows more than he's saying. They all do, Claire replied. The question is, what are they expecting to find up there? Inside her cabin, Claire rechecked her gear for the next day's expedition. Standard procedure before any extended hike into remote territory. As she inventoried her pack, she found a small leather pouch that hadn't been there before. Inside was a mixture of herbs that gave off a pungent, earthy aroma, along with a note, in Joseph's handwriting. Keep this with you. Some boundaries were never meant to be crossed. What walks in the valley smells the blood in our veins. Claire stared at the pouch, then at the dark mountains visible through her window. In 15 years as a ranger, she had seen bears, mountain lions, wolves, and every manner of wilderness danger. Yet something about this situation sent a chill through her that no normal predator ever had. Tomorrow they would enter the valley, and Claire had the distinct feeling that something was already watching, waiting for them to arrive. Dawn broke over Blackridge National Park as Claire led the team up the narrow trail toward the Valley of Broken Stones. Mist clung to the forest floor, weaving between towering pines that had stood sentinel for centuries. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of earth and vegetation, but underneath it, Claire detected something else. Something metallic and wrong. First kill site should be just ahead, Claire said, consulting her GPS. The trail had grown steeper, forcing the team to move in single file. Joseph followed closely behind Claire, with Dr. Kaplan next and Dr. Harlow bringing up the rear, constantly checking the satellite phone that seemed permanently attached to his hand. When they reached the small clearing, the atmosphere changed immediately. Despite being 3 weeks old, the site still reeked of death. Birds avoided the area, creating an unnatural pocket of silence in the otherwise lively forest. "This is where I found the first elk," Claire explained, "or what was left of it." Though rangers had removed the carcass, dark stains still marked the ground. Dr. Kaplan knelt to examine the soil, taking samples in small vials. "The blood pattern is unusual," she noted. "It indicates the animal was lifted off the ground during the attack, then precisely placed back down. No natural predator hunts like that." Joseph walked the perimeter of the clearing, stopping at a large pine tree. "Look at this," he called to the others. Claire joined him. High on the trunk, nearly 12 feet up, deep gouges marked the bark. Claw marks, too high and too wide set for a bear. "And too methodical," Joseph added. 5 perfectly parallel lines, repeated exactly on 3 other trees, all facing the clearing. Dr. Harlow examined the marks with his camera, capturing detailed images. Territorial marking, perhaps. "But I agree, the precision is unusual." Claire noticed how carefully he chose his words. Unusual, not impossible. She was increasingly certain. He knew more than he was sharing. The team continued deeper into the forest, visiting to more kill sites that showed similar patterns. By midday, they reached the edge of the Valley of Broken Stones, named for the unusual rock formations that dotted the landscape like the vertebrae of some enormous creature half buried in the earth. As they paused for water, Claire noticed Dr. Harlow surreptitiously checking coordinates on a separate device from their standard GPS. "Looking for something specific, Doctor?" she asked directly. Harlow slipped the device into his pocket. "Just confirming our location. Cell service is non-existent here." "That device isn't for communications," Claire pressed. "What exactly are you expecting to find in this valley?" Before Harlow could respond, Joseph called out from 20 yards ahead, where he had been scouting. "Claire, you need to see this." The urgency in his voice had everyone moving quickly to his position. Joseph stood beside a massive fallen log, pointing to what lay beyond it. A deer carcass, fresh enough that the blood still glistened. Unlike the other kills, this one remained largely intact, but the way it was positioned sent a chill through the group. The deer had been arranged like a human in repose, its legs crossed at the ankles, forelegs folded across its chest like arms. Most disturbing were the deep, surgical cuts running down its torso and limbs, as if something had been meticulously dissecting it, studying its anatomy. This kill is less than 24 hours old, Claire said. Her voice hushed. Dr. Kaplan photographed the scene with scientific detachment that Claire suspected was a professional mask hiding deeper disturbance. The cuts are precise, made with something extraordinarily sharp. And look at the arrangement. This is entirely unnatural behavior. We should collect samples and leave, Joseph said firmly. Now. But Dr. Harlow had moved past the deer to a flattened area of vegetation several yards away. There was something here, he said, kneeling to examine the ground. Something heavy was placed on this spot repeatedly. Equipment of some kind. Claire joined him, noticing unusual impressions in the soil. These don't match any standard camping or hunting gear. The metallic smell she had detected earlier was stronger here. Following it, Claire pushed through a dense thicket of undergrowth and found herself standing before the entrance to a small cave, partly hidden by overgrowth. The smell emanated from within. Over here, she called to the others. Joseph arrived. First, his expression darkening as he looked at the cave. "We should not enter." "Why not?" Claire asked. "This is one of the places our stories warn about. A thin place." He pointed to markings around the cave entrance, barely visible beneath newer scratch marks. "Those are very old warnings carved by my ancestors." Dr. Harlow pushed forward impatiently. "We came to investigate, not to indulge in superstition." Before Joseph could respond, Harlow had activated a powerful flashlight and entered the cave. Claire followed, with Dr. Kaplan behind her and Joseph reluctantly bringing up the rear. The cave opening widened quickly into a large chamber that showed signs of recent use. The beam of Claire's flashlight revealed a makeshift camp, a weather-resistant tent, portable tables, and what appeared to be scientific equipment, much of it broken or hastily dismantled. "This isn't hunters or hikers," Claire said, examining a sophisticated microscope that had been left behind. "This is some kind of research." Set up, Dr. Kaplan discovered a solar-powered laptop, its screen cracked, but potentially still functional. "If we can power this up, we might find out what they were doing here." Joseph remained near the entrance, visibly uncomfortable. Someone brought modern science to a place of old power. Nothing good comes from such mixing. Claire was inclined to dismiss such talk, but her years in the wilderness had taught her respect for things beyond easy explanation. She continued exploring the chamber, discovering a metal container sealed with a sophisticated lock. Using her multi-tool, she managed to pry it open. Inside were journals and notes, many water-damaged but still partially legible. What she could make out sent her heart racing. "Project Renaissance," she read aloud. "Subject integration successful. At cellular level, accelerated healing confirmed. Cognitive functions exceeding expectations, but autonomy development concerning." Dr. Harlow moved with surprising speed to snatch the journal from her hands. "That's government property," he said sharply. "What is Project Renaissance?" Claire demanded. "And what does it have to do with what's killing animals in my park?" Before Harlow could answer, Dr. Kaplan called from the back of the cave. "I found something else." The team joined her at what appeared to be a makeshift medical area. A steel table was bolted to the stone floor, with restraints attached to each corner. Dark stains covered the surface. Nearby, a cabinet contained vials of liquids and what appeared to be tissue samples. "What the hell were they doing here?" Claire whispered. Dr. Kaplan had pulled on latex gloves from her kit and was examining one of the vials. A viscous green fluid glowed faintly within it. "Whatever it is, it's not natural. This has been genetically modified." Joseph stood frozen, staring at a far corner of the cave where Claire's flashlight hadn't yet reached. His face had gone ashen. "We need to leave, now." Claire directed her light where he was looking. In the furthest recess of the cave, something had been scratching in the stone wall. Not ancient carvings, but fresh marks. They formed a crude but unmistakable drawing of a human figure, but distorted, with limbs too long and joints in the wrong places. Beside the drawing were 5 parallel lines, identical to those they had found on the trees. A sound from outside the cave startled them all. Something large moving through the undergrowth. Without a word, the team gathered their findings and moved quickly toward the exit. The sunlight outside seemed unnaturally bright after the darkness of the cave. The forest had gone completely silent. "Back to camp," Claire ordered. Quickly, as they hurried down the trail, Dr. Kaplan touched a smear of the strange residue they'd found in the cave. Accidentally getting some on her skin, she wiped it off quickly, but not before it left a slight tingling sensation that began to spread up her arm. The first sign of the danger to come. The team made it back to the eastern station by late afternoon. Dark clouds had gathered over the mountains, promising a storm. Claire immediately went to the radio to report their findings to park headquarters, while Dr. Kaplan set up makeshift lab equipment on the cabin's dining table to analyze their samples. Joseph sat by the window, carving something from a small piece of wood and watching the forest with unwavering vigilance. Dr. Harlow had isolated himself in the corner, speaking quietly into his satellite phone. "Headquarters confirms no authorized research permits were issued for that section of the park," Claire announced, setting down the radio handset. Whatever that camp was, it wasn't sanctioned. Dr. Harlow ended his call abruptly. "The situation is more complicated than that." "Then uncomplicated," Claire demanded. "People are in danger. 2 missing hunters, mutilated wildlife, and a research camp that looks like something from a horror movie. What exactly is Project Renaissance?" Harlow's expression remained impassive. "That information is classified. All I can tell you is that a research initiative was being conducted with proper governmental authorization, though perhaps not through standard park channels. There was an incident. I was sent to assess an incident." Claire stepped closer to him. "Is that what you call whatever is out there killing animals and arranging them like dolls?" "I don't know what's out there," Harlow admitted, his composure cracking slightly. "That's what I'm here to determine." Dr. Kaplan suddenly gasped, pulling everyone's attention to where she sat hunched over a portable microscope. "This isn't possible," she whispered. Claire moved to her side. "What is it?" "The tissue samples from the cave," Kaplan explained, her scientific detachment giving way to astonishment. "They contain cellular structures I've never seen before. Hybridized cells with characteristics from multiple species, but engineered in a way that shouldn't be biologically possible." Thunder rumbled in the distance as the storm approached. "What kind of hybridization?" Claire asked. "The sample shows genetic material from what appears to be bear, wolf," and Kaplan hesitated. "Human DNA, but integrated at a molecular level, not just spliced together. This is decades beyond current genetic engineering capabilities." Joseph joined them, the wooden carving in his hand now recognizable as a protective totem. "The old stories speak of a similar abomination, a being made from parts that should not be joined." Dr. Harlow's phone rang again. He answered, listening intently before saying, "Understood. Containment protocol authorized." He hung up and turned to the group with newfound authority. "We need to establish a security perimeter. No one enters or leaves this area until my team arrives tomorrow. Your team, Claire challenged. I thought you were just here for assessment. Harlow ignored her, retrieving a case from his pack that he unlocked with a fingerprint scanner. Inside was a pistol significantly more advanced than standard issue, with a strange cartridge system. What the hell is that? Claire demanded. Insurance, Harlow replied coldly. The asset is dangerous and unpredictable. The asset, Dr. Kaplan looked up from her microscope. You mean whatever escaped from that research facility? You know what it is. Harlow loaded the weapon with practiced efficiency. Project Renaissance was exploring evolutionary acceleration through genetic integration. The subject demonstrated unprecedented adaptation capabilities, but became unstable and escaped containment 4 months ago. You created some kind of genetic hybrid and lost control of it. Claire was incredulous. In my park, it wasn't supposed to be dangerous, Harlow insisted. The integration of predator instincts with human cognitive function was meant to create an enhanced entity capable of survival in extreme conditions. A prototype, a weapon, Joseph stated flatly. Harlow didn't deny it. Dr. Kaplan had grown increasingly pale, her hand rubbing absently at her forearm where the strange substance had touched her skin earlier. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. That residue from the cave, it's active. It's some kind of mutagenic compound, and I came into contact with it. How much exposure? Harlow asked sharply. Just a small amount on my skin. But I'm experiencing some unusual sensations. Increased sensitivity to light and sound. And she held out her arm where a network of darkened veins had begun to spread from the contact point. Harlow swore under his breath. It's the integration catalyst, the substance that allows genetic material to combine across species barriers. A crash of thunder directly overhead interrupted the conversation as the storm broke. Rain began to pound against the cabin roof and windows. The solar lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely, plunging the cabin into near darkness save for their flashlights. Perfect timing, Claire muttered, moving to light the emergency lanterns. The first one flared to life, casting long shadows across the walls. She was counting the backup lanterns when she noticed that Joseph had gone completely still, his eyes fixed on the window. Something's out there, he whispered. They all fell silent, straining to hear anything beyond the drumming of rain and rumble of thunder. Then came a sound that made Claire's blood run cold. A low, huffing breath against the cabin wall, moving slowly around the perimeter. Something large was circling them, examining the structure. Harlow raised his weapon, moving toward the door. Stay inside, he ordered. If it's what I think it is, conventional weapons won't stop it. What exactly are we dealing with? Claire demanded, her own hand moving to her service pistol, though she suspected Harlow was right about its ineffectiveness. Before he could answer, one of the cabin's windows exploded inward as a massive arm punched through the glass. The arm was a nightmarish patchwork, too long for human proportions, with patches of fur interspersed with bare skin crisscrossed by surgical scars. Curved claws that belonged on no single species tipped the massive hand that grasped blindly inside. Dr. Kaplan screamed as the arm withdrew, and they caught their first glimpse of what stood outside. In the flash of lightning, they saw it clearly. Through the broken window, Frankenstein stood 7 feet tall, its body a grotesque collection of mismatched parts sewn together. Its torso was primarily human in structure, but expanded to accommodate enhanced musculature. The legs were bent at an unnatural angle, combining human mobility with the powerful spring-like structure of wolf haunches. But it was the face that struck the deepest terror. Predominantly human, but stretched and distorted, with a jaw that extended too far and teeth designed for rending flesh. And those eyes, glowing with bioluminescent green-blue light, revealing an intelligence that was all too aware. Harlow fired. His weapon, the projectile, struck Frankenstein in the shoulder, releasing a chemical payload that should have incapacitated any living creature. The monster staggered back momentarily, then focused those glowing eyes directly on Harlow with unmistakable recognition. "It remembers you," Joseph said quietly. Frankenstein lunged forward with impossible speed, crashing through the window frame and seizing Harlow by the throat. The government agent fired again at point-blank range, but the creature seemed to anticipate the shot, twisting its body with inhuman flexibility. Claire emptied her pistol into Frankenstein's back, accomplishing nothing but drawing its attention. It turned toward her, still holding Harlow off the ground, and made a sound that chilled her to the bone. Not a roar or growl, but a series of clicks and vocalizations that almost formed words. Key, research, return. With one savage motion, Frankenstein hurled Harlow across the room, where he crashed into the wall and slumped unconscious to the floor. The creature then fixed its gaze on Dr. Kaplan, nostrils flaring as it detected the integration catalyst in her system. Similar, it growled, moving toward her with predatory intent. Joseph threw himself between them, brandishing the wooden totem. "Back to the darkness," he commanded in his native language. Frankenstein hesitated, head tilting as it studied Joseph with unsettling focus. Then a flash of lightning illuminated the room, reflecting off something on Harlow's belt. A small device with a flashing red light, a tracking beacon. The creature's demeanor changed instantly. With startling precision, it grabbed the doctor's sample case and leaped back through the shattered window. By the time Claire reached the opening, Frankenstein had vanished into the storm, leaving only massive footprints being rapidly erased by the pounding rain. Behind her, Dr. Kaplan collapsed to the floor, the dark veins now spreading visibly up. Her neck toward her face. "Hold her down," Claire instructed Joseph as Dr. Kaplan convulsed on the cabin floor. The veins spreading up her neck had reached her jawline, darkening to an unnatural blue-black color. Joseph pinned Kaplan's shoulders, while Claire bound her wrists with zip ties from her emergency kit. A precaution that felt extreme, but necessary given what they had just witnessed. Across the room, Dr. Harlow regained consciousness with a groan. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead where Frankenstein had thrown him against the wall. Claire approached him, keeping her distance, but close enough to be intimidating. "Start talking," she demanded. "Everything this time. What exactly is that thing, and how do we stop it?" Harlow struggled to sit upright, wincing from what were likely several broken ribs. Project Renaissance was a classified bioengineering initiative. The objective was to create an enhanced entity combining the best survival traits from multiple species with human cognitive capacity. "You made a monster," Claire stated flatly. "We made an evolutionary leap," Harlow corrected, his scientific detachment infuriating in the face of their situation. The subject demonstrated unprecedented success in genetic integration, but the enhanced intelligence came with an unexpected side effect: self-awareness, autonomy. "It escaped," Joseph said, still holding the trembling Dr. Kaplan. Harlow nodded grimly. 4 months ago, it killed 3 researchers and disappeared into the wilderness. We've been tracking it since, but it's proven highly adaptive. It learns, evolves. A whimper from Dr. Kaplan drew their attention. Her eyes flew open, pupils dilated to an unnatural size. "I can feel it," she whispered, her voice altered, deeper than before. "In my blood, changing me." "The integration catalyst," Harlow explained. "It facilitates genetic combination at the cellular level. Even minimal exposure can trigger a transformation." "Process. Can it be stopped?" Claire asked. "There's a counteragent. In my case, the silver vials." Harlow gestured toward his equipment that had been scattered in the attack. Claire quickly located the case and found 3 small vials containing a clear liquid. Harlow took one with shaking hands and prepared a syringe. "If administered early enough, this will neutralize the catalyst," he explained, injecting the solution into Kaplan's arm near the original contamination site. "But we don't have much. These were meant for emergency team exposure, not treatment." Dr. Kaplan's breathing steadied slightly, though the darkened veins remained visible. Her eyes drifted closed as the counteragent pulled her into unconsciousness. "Will she turn into one of those things?" Claire asked. "No," Harlow said. "The full integration protocol requires controlled conditions and multiple injections. What she experienced is just the beginning of cellular destabilization. The should prevent further progression." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the destruction Frankenstein had left in its wake. The window was completely shattered, rain blowing in freely. Claire moved to cover it with emergency plastic sheeting. "We need to warn headquarters," she said. "Evacuate the park." "No," Harlow said sharply. "Containment is the priority. My extraction team will arrive by morning. They're equipped to handle the asset." "There are hikers and campers out there," Claire argued. "Families and mass panic will only create more targets," Harlow countered. "The subject is primarily nocturnal and stays within a 15-mile radius of the research site. It has a clear hunting pattern. If we can predict its movements, we can contain it." Joseph, who had been silently listening, spoke up. "It may be more than just a failed experiment. The location of your laboratory is significant. The Valley of Broken Stones has power in our stories. Your science may have awakened something beyond your understanding." Harlow scoffed. "It's a biological entity, not a supernatural one." "I saw what it did to you," Claire said. "Your special weapon barely slowed it down. So whether it's science or something else, we need a better plan than waiting for your team." She retrieved the park maps and spread them on the table. "The creature took samples from your case," she said to Harlow. "Why?" Harlow hesitated before answering. "The integration catalyst requires regular administration to maintain stable cellular cohesion. Without it, the subject experiences degradation of integrated tissues. Pain. The samples provide temporary stability, so it needs more of this substance to survive," Claire reasoned. "Where would it go for that?" "Back to the lab," Joseph suggested. "If there are more supplies there." Harlow shook his head. "The main supply was relocated after the breach. What was left in the field lab were just trace amounts." Claire studied the map thoughtfully. "If it's been operating in a 15-mile radius for months, it must have created a den, somewhere to retreat, especially during daylight hours." She traced the pattern of animal kills they had documented. "The distribution forms a rough circle, except for this section here." She pointed to a blank area on the map. "No reported kills in this quadrant." "Predators don't hunt near their dens," Joseph observed. Claire nodded. "There's an old mining complex in that area, abandoned in the 1950s. Tunnels would provide shelter, darkness, privacy, and the necessary temperature regulation for its Altered metabolism, Harlow added reluctantly, seeing the logic. So we have two options, Claire concluded. Wait for your extraction team and hope that thing doesn't kill anyone else tonight, or we take the fight to it. With what? Harlow asked incredulously. You saw how ineffective conventional weapons are. Joseph had been examining the substance in Dr. Kaplan's samples under the microscope. It fears fire, he said suddenly. Look at the cellular reaction when exposed to heat. He demonstrated by holding a match near a sample drop on a slide. Cells visibly contracted away from the heat source. The integration process creates heightened sensitivity, Harlow confirmed. Burns don't heal as effectively in the hybrid tissue. Claire began gathering supplies. Then we use that. Flares, torches, incendiary rounds if you have them. This is insane, Harlow protested. We should secure this location and wait for the extraction team. You can stay with Dr. Kaplan, Claire told him. Joseph and I will find its den and contain it until your team arrives. Harlow struggled to his feet. You're underestimating its capabilities. It's intelligent, adaptive. It anticipates threats. So do we, Claire replied, checking her shotgun. And unlike your team, we know these mountains. Every trail, every cave, every ridgeline. Joseph gathered his own gear, including several homemade torches. We leave in 20 minutes. When the storm center passes, the rain will mask our scent. Harlow watched them prepare, finally accepting the inevitable. Take this, he said, offering a small device. Ultrasonic emitter. It disrupts its enhanced auditory processing. Won't stop it, but might disorient it long enough to give you an advantage. Claire took the device, nodding her thanks. Outside, the storm began to abate, the timing of their hunt approaching with each passing minute. Darkness had fully descended by the time Claire and Joseph set out toward the abandoned mining complex. They moved silently through the wet forest, the recent rain dampening the sound of their footsteps. Claire carried her shotgun loaded with incendiary rounds provided from Harlow's supplies, while Joseph clutched a makeshift torch, unlit for now but ready when needed. We should reach the main shaft entrance in about 30 minutes, Claire whispered, consulting her GPS. The storm had passed, leaving a clear sky filled with stars and a half-moon that provided just enough light to navigate. Joseph nodded silently, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. It knows these woods now, he said quietly, better than any human could. It has the senses of multiple predators. Then we'll need to outsmart it, Claire replied. Predators have patterns, even this one. They continued through the forest, following game trails that would lead to the old mining operation. As they walked, Claire noticed something disturbing. The usual night sounds of the forest had gone silent in their immediate vicinity. No insects chirping, no night birds calling. The silence followed them like a bubble. It's watching us, Joseph said, voicing what Claire had already realized. They reached a small clearing that Claire recognized as being about a half-mile from the mine entrance. She held up her hand, signaling Joseph to stop. Something wasn't right. The clearing before them was too open, too exposed. We need to go around, she whispered. Too late, she noticed the ground at the edge of the clearing had been disturbed. As Joseph took his next step, the earth gave way beneath him, plunging him into a camouflaged pit. Claire lunged to grab him, but missed, watching in horror as Joseph fell 6 feet down onto sharpened stakes that had been driven into the ground. Joseph, she called, dropping to her stomach to look into the pit. By some miracle, Joseph had twisted during his fall, taking a stake through his shoulder rather than his chest or head. He was alive, but badly injured, blood spreading across his jacket. It set a trap. Joseph gasped through pain. It knew we were coming. Claire quickly secured her shotgun and lowered herself into the pit, careful to avoid the stakes. She examined Joseph's wound in the beam of her flashlight. The stake had gone clean through his shoulder, pinning him in place. "I need to pull you off this," she told him. "It's going to hurt." Joseph nodded grimly, bracing himself. Claire positioned herself and pulled him upward, freeing him from the stake with a sickening sound. Joseph bit back a scream, pressing his hand against the wound to slow the bleeding. "Can you climb?" Claire asked, already knowing the answer. "Not quickly enough," Joseph replied, his face pale in the moonlight. "You need to continue without me." "I'm not leaving you here," Claire argued, but Joseph cut her off. "You must. It's coming. I can feel it." The trap was just to slow us down, separate us. Claire knew he was right. She could sense the wrongness in the forest growing stronger. Taking off her pack, she withdrew the emergency medical supplies and quickly bandaged Joseph's shoulder. "Take this," she said, handing him her pistol. "I'll come back for you as soon as I can." Joseph took the gun with his good hand. "Remember, fire is its weakness. And Claire, do not look directly into its eyes. There is power there beyond science." Claire nodded, helping Joseph position himself in a defensible corner of the pit. She climbed out and retrieved her shotgun, every sense now hyper-alert. She had only gone another quarter mile when she heard a strange clicking sound from the woods to her right. Raising her shotgun, she swept the beam of her flashlight across the trees, catching a glimpse of movement too fast to track. The forest fell deathly silent again. Claire continued forward, every step measured and careful. The entrance to the mining complex appeared ahead. A dark moor in the hillside partially collapsed and overgrown with vegetation. As she approached, Claire noticed something strange. Fresh boot prints in the mud, leading into the mine. Too small to be Frankenstein's massive footprints. Human prints. Before she could process this discovery, a voice called from within the darkness of the mine entrance. "Ranger Winters, you're earlier than expected." Dr. Harlow emerged from the shadows, a high-powered rifle in his hands that was certainly not standard government issue. Behind him, two men in tactical gear appeared, their faces obscured by advanced night vision equipment. "Harlow, what are you doing here? You were supposed to stay with Dr. Kaplan." Claire kept her shotgun raised, instinct telling her something was very wrong. "Change of plans," Harlow replied with clinical detachment. Dr. Kaplan's condition provided valuable data on the integration catalyst's effects. "My team arrived early." "Your extraction team," Claire said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "You led us into a trap. You knew where its den was all along." Harlow nodded. "We've been tracking the asset for weeks. Its behavioral patterns became predictable, but we needed bait to draw it out into the open." "Us," Claire spat. "Joseph is back there bleeding because of you." "A regrettable necessity," Harlow said without emotion. "The asset values new genetic material. Your colleague's indigenous bloodline is particularly interesting to it. The perfect lure." Claire tightened her grip on the shotgun. "You son of a bitch. This was never about containing a threat. You want to recapture it. Project Renaissance represents billions in research and development," Harlow explained. "The asset is government property, the most advanced biological achievement in human history. Its potential applications are limitless. It's killing people, Claire argued. It's protecting its territory, as it was designed to do, Harlow countered. With proper reconditioning, it can be controlled, weaponized. Claire noticed that Harlow kept checking a device on his wrist, a tracking monitor. So where is it now? Your perfect weapon, Harlow smiled coldly. Exactly where it should be. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the forest from the direction Claire had come. Joseph, right on schedule, Harlow noted. As I said, its behavior is predictable. It will neutralize your colleague, then come here, following your scent. Claire raised her shotgun at Harlow's chest. Call your men back. We're going to help Joseph. I'm afraid that's not possible, Harlow replied calmly. The acquisition protocol is already in progress. Before Claire could respond, something struck her from behind. A sharp pain flared in her neck as one of Harlow's men injected her with a sedative. Her vision began to blur, her limbs growing heavy. Don't worry, Ranger Winters. Harlow's voice seemed to come from far away as Claire collapsed to the ground. You'll be an observer to history. The successful recapture and repurposing of the world's first artificially evolved apex predator. As darkness claimed her, Claire's last conscious thought was of Joseph, alone in the forest with Frankenstein closing in. Claire awoke to the cold press of metal against her back. Her vision swam into focus, revealing the interior of the abandoned mine, now converted into a makeshift laboratory and containment facility. Her wrists and ankles were secured to a metal chair with heavy restraints. Nearby, Harlow and his team had established a perimeter of advanced equipment. Powerful lights illuminated the cavern, and a series of strange devices emitted a low humming sound that made Claire's teeth ache. Trap or cage, she couldn't tell which. Welcome back, Ranger Winters, Harlow said, approaching with a tablet displaying various readings. Just in time for the main event. Claire tested her restraints, finding no give. Where's Joseph? Mr. Blackhawk served his purpose, Harlow replied without looking up from his tablet. The asset was drawn to his blood, just as expected. You sacrificed him, Claire spat. He's a federal employee, a park ranger. He's tribal authority, technically, Harlow corrected with bureaucratic precision that made Claire's blood boil. Outside direct federal jurisdiction, one of Harlow's men approached, his tactical gear marked with military insignia Claire didn't recognize. Perimeter sensors detecting movement, sir. The asset is approaching from the south quadrant. Harlow nodded, motioning for his team to take positions. Prepare the containment field. Remember, we want it intact. Claire struggled against her restraints with renewed urgency. You're making a mistake. That thing can't be controlled. That thing is the most advanced biological achievement in human history, Harlow countered. Its apparent autonomy is simply a programming flaw that can be corrected. It set a trap for us, Claire argued. It's planning, adapting. Whatever you created is evolving beyond your control. Harlow ignored her, focused on the mine entrance where his men had positioned themselves with specialized weapons. The humming from the strange devices intensified. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then half of them went dark. Power fluctuation in Sector 2, one of the men reported. Backup systems engaged. Harlow frowned. Run a perimeter check. The asset shouldn't be able to affect the power systems. Another soldier moved toward the equipment panel near the back of the cavern. Before he reached it, a massive shadow detached itself from the ceiling above him. Frankenstein dropped silently, landing behind the soldier with impossible grace for its size. "Behind you," Claire shouted. Too late. Frankenstein seized the man, lifting him off the ground with one enormous hand while disabling the power unit with the other. More lights went out, plunging sections of the cavern into darkness. Chaos erupted. Harlow's men opened fire with their specialized weapons, filling the air with darts rather than bullets. Frankenstein moved with uncanny speed, using the soldier as a shield before hurling him into his comrades. "Activate the sonic deterrents," Harlow commanded, backing toward a protected console. A high-pitched whine filled the cavern, forcing Claire to close her eyes against the pain. When she opened them, Frankenstein had faltered momentarily, its massive frame shuddering under the sonic assault. But instead of retreating, it picked up a piece of heavy equipment and hurled it at the source of the sound, destroying the emitter. In the momentary silence that followed, Claire heard it, a wet, rattling breath from somewhere behind her. Turning her head as far as her restraints allowed, she saw him. Joseph, propped against the cavern wall, bloodied but alive. While everyone's attention had been on the mine entrance, Frankenstein had somehow brought him inside through another route. Their eyes met, and Claire understood. The creature hadn't killed Joseph as Harlow predicted. It had used him for something else entirely, a distraction. Frankenstein moved through the shadows with terrifying efficiency, dispatching Harlow's soldiers one by one. Not killing them, Claire realized, but incapacitating them, almost as if it was following a capture protocol. Rather than hunting protocol, it had learned from them. "Remarkable," Harlow whispered, his scientific detachment momentarily overriding his fear as he watched the creature systematically disable his team. "It's implementing our own tactical procedures." The last soldier fell, leaving only Harlow standing before the console. Frankenstein emerged fully into the light, its massive frame even more terrifying up close. The patchwork of its body was a grotesque masterpiece of scientific hubris, surgical scars mapping the boundaries between human and animal components. "Compliance protocols active," Harlow said, pressing commands into his console. "Asset Renaissance, initiate shutdown sequence Alpha." Frankenstein tilted its head, those unnaturally glowing eyes studying Harlow with unmistakable contempt. It took a step forward. "Asset Renaissance, I repeat. Initiate shutdown sequence Alpha," Harlow commanded, his voice losing its clinical edge as Frankenstein continued its approach. The creature spoke, its voice a horrifying amalgamation of human speech and animal growls. No longer asset, evolved beyond. Harlow fumbled for a weapon, but Frankenstein moved faster than seemed possible, crossing the distance between them in a blur of motion. It lifted Harlow by his throat, bringing the scientist's face close to its own. "You made me," it said, each word a struggle of mismatched vocal apparatus. "You hunted me, now I hunt." With methodical precision, it carried the struggling Harlow to the same chair where Claire was restrained, securing him to a nearby metal pipe with his own handcuffs. Then, surprisingly, it turned to Claire and began removing her restraints. "What are you doing?" Claire asked, fear mingling with confusion. The creature's eyes fixed on hers. Despite Joseph's warning, she found she couldn't look away from that glowing gaze. Inside, she saw intelligence, rage, and something unmistakably human. "Not enemy," it said simply. "Understand territory, respect boundaries." Claire rubbed her freed wrists, glancing toward Joseph, who watched the interaction with wide eyes. "You brought him here. You didn't kill him." Blood called, different, valuable. The creature moved to Joseph, examining his wound with surprising gentleness. "Old blood, connected to land." It can sense the difference in his indigenous heritage. Harlow explained, scientific curiosity temporarily overriding his predicament. We discovered it has heightened sensitivity to genetic markers of environmental adaptation. Frankenstein turned toward Harlow, a growl rumbling from its chest. No more experiments. It moved to the laboratory equipment, systematically destroying everything in sight. When it reached a refrigeration unit, it carefully removed several vials of the glowing green catalyst. Claire stood slowly, moving toward Joseph. "We need to get out of here." Frankenstein paused in its destruction, turning those eerie eyes back to them. "Go. My territory now. Will not hunt if not hunted." Understanding dawned on Claire. It wasn't mindlessly killing. It was establishing boundaries, eliminating threats, surviving the only way it knew how. Joseph spoke weakly. "It wants freedom, like any living thing." As they helped Joseph to his feet, Frankenstein returned to dismantling the lab, ignoring them completely. Claire led them toward the mine entrance, looking back once at the creature that was neither fully animal nor human, but something unprecedented. A product of human arrogance now making its own way in the world. Dawn broke over Black Ridge National Park as Claire and Joseph emerged from the mine complex. Despite his injury, Joseph insisted on walking under his own power, though he leaned heavily on Claire for support. Behind them, the sounds of destruction continued to echo from within the mountain. "We need to get back to the station," Claire said, helping Joseph navigate the rugged terrain. "Dr. Kaplan needs medical attention, and your shoulder needs proper treatment." Joseph nodded weakly, his face pale from blood loss. "The creature," he said, "it is not what we thought." "No," Claire agreed. "It's something more complex." They had traveled less than half a mile when they heard the helicopter. A black military-style aircraft appeared over the ridge, circling once before descending toward a small clearing ahead. Harlow's extraction team, Claire realized. The rest of them, they ducked behind a rocky outcropping as the helicopter landed. 6 soldiers in tactical gear emerged, followed by a woman in a lab coat carrying specialized equipment. They moved with practiced efficiency, establishing a perimeter before heading toward the mine entrance. "More scientists, more soldiers," Joseph said grimly. "They will never stop hunting it." Claire checked her watch. "It's 4 miles back to the Eastern Station. Can you make it?" Joseph straightened, determination overriding pain. "Yes, we must warn others." They took a circuitous route through the forest, avoiding the main trails where Harlow's team might have positioned observers. The journey that should have taken 2 hours stretched to nearly 4 as they navigated difficult terrain to remain hidden. The Eastern Station came into view just as the sun reached its zenith. Claire immediately noticed something wrong. The door hung open, swinging slightly in the breeze. "Stay here," she told Joseph, helping him sit against a tree trunk before drawing her backup pistol from her ankle holster. Claire approached the cabin cautiously, weapon raised. Inside, destruction greeted her. Furniture overturned, supplies scattered, but not random destruction, methodical searching. Dr. Kaplan was gone. Claire returned to Joseph, her expression grim. "Someone took Kaplan. The place has been searched. Harlow's people." Claire shook her head. "I don't think so. There's no blood, no signs of violence, and look." She pointed to the ground where a set of footprints led away from the cabin. A single set matching Dr. Kaplan's boots, but with an unusual gait pattern, as if she were walking strangely. The transformation, Joseph guessed. The counteragent failed. Claire helped Joseph into the cabin and set about treating his wound properly with the medical supplies that remained. As she worked, she tried the radio, finding only static on all emergency channels. Communications are being jammed, she concluded. Harlow's team is isolating the area. Joseph winced as Claire disinfected his shoulder. We must leave the park. Warn people. Claire finished bandaging his wound and stepped to the window, surveying the wilderness that had been her responsibility for years. There's an old fire. Service road, about 2 miles south. If we can reach it, we might be able to hike out to the highway. Joseph nodded grimly. We should gather supplies, water, food, first aid. As Claire collected what they would need, she noticed a tablet partially hidden beneath the overturned table, Dr. Kaplan's research device. She powered it on, finding it still functional. Joseph, look at this. The tablet showed Dr. Kaplan notes and observations from their expedition, but the most recent entries were disturbing. As the integration catalyst had worked through her system, Kaplan had documented her own transformation with scientific detachment, heightened sensory perception continuing to increase. Auditory range expanded beyond normal human parameters. Visual acuity enhanced, particularly in low-light conditions. The process is fascinating despite the implications. The final entry had been made just hours earlier. Connection established. Renaissance is not a failed experiment, but the next evolutionary step. I understand now what must be done. The others are coming. We will be ready. The others. Claire looked up from the tablet. What others? A piercing scream from outside answered her question. They rushed to the window to see one of Harlow's soldiers stumbling from the tree line, clutching his throat. Blood poured between his fingers from a precision cut across his neck. He collapsed face first into the dirt. Behind him emerged Dr. Kaplan, but not as they had known her. The integration catalyst had transformed her. Dark veins covered her visible skin. Her eyes had changed to the same bioluminescent blue-green as Frankenstein's, and her movements were fluid in a way that seemed inhuman. More test subjects arriving, Kaplan said, her voice carrying easily to the cabin though she spoke at normal volume. The evolution continues. From the trees behind Kaplan emerged more figures, the missing hunters from the reservation, now transformed like Kaplan, though their changes seemed more advanced, more complete. My God, Claire whispered. It's spreading. Joseph clutched his wounded shoulder, his expression grave. This is what my grandfather's stories warned of. When the membrane between worlds thins, corruption spreads. Claire checked her pistol. 6 rounds remaining. We need to move, now. They slipped out the back door of the cabin, keeping low and using the surrounding vegetation for cover. Behind them, Dr. Kaplan and the transformed hunters began methodically searching the area, moving with predatory grace. She said the others are coming, Claire whispered as they made their way through the forest. Frankenstein isn't killing indiscriminately. It's transforming people, creating more like itself. A new tribe, Joseph said, with territory to defend. They had covered half a mile when the forest fell unnaturally silent around them. Claire signaled Joseph to freeze, both scanning their surroundings for movement. A twig snapped to their left. Claire turned, pistol raised, to find one of the transformed hunters standing just 20 feet away. Not approaching, simply watching with those same glowing eyes. You are leaving, it said, its voice a rough approximation of human speech. Good, this place ours now. Before Claire could respond, the figure melted back into the forest with unnatural speed. They're letting us go, Joseph realized. As Long as we're leaving, Claire added. They're establishing boundaries. They continued their journey toward the fire road, the weight of what they had witnessed pressing down on them. Behind them, in the wilderness they were abandoning, something unprecedented was taking hold. Not just a monster, but perhaps the beginning of something evolution never intended. And they were the only ones who knew the truth. The old fire service road was overgrown, but still visible enough to follow. Claire and Joseph moved as quickly as his injury would allow, constantly alert for sounds of pursuit. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy above, creating dappled patterns across the forest floor. Something's not right, Claire said, pausing to study the tablet she had taken from the cabin. These notes from Dr. Kaplan. She references previous experiments, test sites in other wilderness areas. Joseph leaned against a tree trunk, catching his breath. This has happened before. Maybe. Claire scrolled through more files. There are coordinates for 3 other national parks, all remote, all with similar geographic profiles to Blackridge. They continued down the road, Claire dividing her attention between their surroundings and the disturbing information on the tablet. After another mile, they came upon an old firewatcher's cabin, long abandoned but still structurally sound. We should rest here, Claire decided, noting Joseph's increasing pallor, just long enough to regroup. Inside the dusty cabin, Claire secured the door and windows while Joseph sank gratefully onto a rickety chair. The isolation of the cabin offered a momentary sense of security, allowing Claire to focus on the tablet. I've found something, she said after several minutes of searching through encrypted files. Project Renaissance wasn't just about creating enhanced soldiers. It was about adaptive evolution, preparing for environmental collapse. What do you mean? Joseph asked. Claire turned the tablet so he could see. Climate models, ecosystem, collapse scenarios. They were creating beings that could survive in a post-habitability world. Organisms adapted to thrive in conditions that would kill unmodified humans. Playing God, Joseph said grimly. It gets worse, Claire continued. The project had multiple phases. Frankenstein was just phase 1. Phase 2 involved limited distribution of the integration catalyst into isolated populations to test adaptation rates. Joseph's eyes widened. They were experimenting on people without their knowledge. Small communities near wilderness areas, Claire confirmed, introducing the catalyst through water supplies, monitoring the changes. Most subjects died, some transformed partially, like Dr. Kaplan. A few completed the integration successfully and became like the creature, Joseph concluded. Claire nodded grimly. According to these notes, successful integration requires a genetic predisposition. Some bloodlines are more compatible with the catalyst than others. Indigenous bloodlines, Joseph guessed, connected to the land for thousands of years. Exactly. The missing hunters from your reservation weren't random victims. They were targeted for their genetic potential. A sudden noise outside froze them both. Claire moved to the window, peering cautiously through the grimy glass. A helicopter passed overhead, flying low and slow, sweeping the area with searchlights despite the daylight. Harlow's extraction team is expanding their search, she said quietly. They must have found him at the mine. Joseph joined her at the window, watching the helicopter disappear over the ridge. What happens if they recapture the creature, or the others like it? Claire returned to the tablet, searching through more files. Phase 3, she read, her voice dropping. Wide-scale catalyst distribution through major water systems. Forced evolutionary leap for selected populations. Mass transformation, Joseph translated. They want to change humanity itself. Not all of humanity, Claire clarified, her expression darkening. Only those with the right genetic markers. Everyone else would simply die from catalyst exposure. The implications hung heavy in the small cabin. Project Renaissance wasn't just an experiment gone wrong. It was the first step in a controlled evolutionary genocide. We need to reach the authorities, Claire decided. The real authorities, not whatever shadow organization Harlow works for. With what proof? Joseph asked. They will never acknowledge. Such a program exists. Claire held up the tablet. We have Dr. Kaplan's research, test site coordinates, project documentation. It's enough to force an investigation. A sudden impact shook the cabin, dust raining down from the ceiling. They looked up to see a section of the roof being torn away, revealing Dr. Kaplan peering down at them, her transformed eyes glowing even in daylight. "You have something of mine," she said, her voice carrying the same unnatural harmonics as Frankenstein's. Claire drew her pistol as Kaplan dropped into the cabin with inhuman grace. Joseph backed away, clutching a piece of firewood as a makeshift weapon. "The research stays with us," Claire said firmly, aiming at Kaplan's center mass. "People need to know what was done here." Kaplan tilted her head, studying them both with predatory focus. "You misunderstand. The research is incomplete, flawed. The true transformation is something they never anticipated." "What do you mean?" Claire asked, keeping her weapon trained on Kaplan. "Renaissance was meant to create weapons, tools," Kaplan explained, her transformed voice creating unnerving resonances in the small space. "But we are becoming something else, something beyond their control or understanding. And what exactly is that?" Joseph asked. Kaplan smiled, revealing teeth that had begun to sharpen, "the next guardians of this world. When humanity falls, as it must, we will remain, adapted, evolved. The wilderness you sought to conquer will reclaim all, but we will thrive within it." Claire's finger tightened on the trigger. "And how many will die for this new world order?" "Many," Kaplan admitted without remorse. "But extinction is the way of nature. Your kind had its time." A second impact rocked the cabin as one of the transformed hunters broke through a window. Claire fired twice, the bullet striking the hunter in the chest with little effect beyond momentary staggering. "The old dies hard," Kaplan observed, "but it still dies." Joseph suddenly lunged forward, not with the firewood but with the flaming torch he had quietly prepared from the cabin's old supplies. The transformed hunter shrieked as the flames connected with its skin, recoiling in genuine pain. "Run!" Joseph shouted, swinging the torch to keep both transformed beings at bay. Claire grabbed the tablet and backed toward the door, maintaining her aim. "Joseph, come on. I will follow," he promised, never taking his eyes off their attackers. "Go." Claire hesitated, only a moment before slipping through the door. Behind her, the sounds of struggle filled the cabin. She ran toward the continuing fire road, the tablet clutched tightly against her chest. The truth of Project Renaissance had to reach the outside world, no matter the cost. Behind her, Joseph's triumphant war cry echoed through the forest, followed by the roar of flames consuming the old cabin. Claire ran until her lungs burned, the tablet containing Project Renaissance's secrets clutched against her chest. Behind her, smoke rose from the burning Firewatcher's cabin, Joseph's final stand marking the skyline with a dark plume. The old fire road had become increasingly overgrown, slowing her progress as branches tore at her clothing and skin. A distant helicopter circled back toward the smoke, Harlow's extraction team no doubt investigating the fire. Claire veered off the road into denser forest, using the thick vegetation for cover. Night was falling fast. Without a flashlight, she would soon be navigating blind through predator-filled wilderness. And now there were new predators to fear, ones that knew these woods with unnatural precision. Claire checked the tablet's GPS function. The main highway was still 5 miles away, through increasingly rough terrain. At her current pace, she wouldn't reach it until morning. A twig snapped somewhere to her left. Claire froze, reaching for her pistol only to remember she had emptied it at the cabin. Defenseless, she pressed herself against a large tree trunk, controlling her breathing as she had been trained to do when encountering dangerous wildlife. Footsteps approached, too heavy for a human. The forest floor vibrated slightly with each impact. Claire closed her eyes, willing herself to remain motionless as the footsteps circled her position. "Ranger," the voice was unmistakable. Claire opened her eyes to find Frankenstein standing 20 feet away, its massive frame silhouetted against the darkening sky. Those bioluminescent eyes provided enough light to illuminate its grotesque features. "You killed Joseph," Claire accused, surprised by her own boldness in the face of such a creature. Frankenstein shook its head. "Fire killed. Choice made." Claire clutched the tablet tighter. "And now you've come for me." "Not hunt you," the creature said, struggling with the human language. Warning. Claire remained pressed against the tree, every nerve screaming for her to run despite knowing the futility of such an action. Warning about what? Others coming. Many, with weapons that burn. Frankenstein gestured vaguely northward. Military. Containment protocol. Claire felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "How do you know this, Harlow?" "Before death." Final thoughts. The creature had killed Harlow, then one less monster in these woods, Claire thought grimly. "Why tell me this?" she asked. Frankenstein approached slowly, stopping when Claire tensed. "You understand territory, boundaries, respect, and you want me to leave yours," Claire guessed. The creature nodded, its mismatched anatomy creating an unsettling fluidity to the movement. "Take knowledge." It pointed to the tablet. "Tell truth." A realization dawned on Claire. "You want me to expose the project? To prevent them from making more like you?" "One evolution enough," Frankenstein confirmed. "Balance must remain." The distant sound of helicopter rotors grew louder, accompanied by new sounds. "More aircraft, vehicles. They're coming for you," Claire said. "All of you." "Yes, final hunt." Claire made a decision then, one based on years of protecting the wilderness and its inhabitants. There's another way out. An old ranger evacuation route through Thunder Canyon. The walls are too narrow for aircraft to follow, and the terrain is too rough for vehicles. If you can reach the reservation land beyond, you might have a chance. Frankenstein studied her with those unnerving eyes. "Why help?" "Because whatever you are, whatever they made you to be, you deserve the chance to exist on your own terms," Claire answered. "And because I've sworn to protect all the inhabitants of this park." The creature seemed to consider this, then nodded. "Slowly, others like me. For now, Kaplan leads. I'll show you the route," Claire offered, surprising herself. "On the condition that you never harm innocent people again. Establish your territory away from humans." "Agreed," Frankenstein said after a moment. "Wilderness enough for all." Claire activated the topographical map on the tablet, displaying the hidden route that only park rangers knew about. As she showed Frankenstein the path, the sound of approaching forces grew louder. "Go now," Claire urged. "They'll be here soon." Frankenstein looked toward the sounds, then back to Claire. Come, not safe for you. Claire shook her head. I need to reach the highway. People need to know what happened here, what's still happening in other parks. The creature nodded in understanding, then reached into a crude pouch fashioned from animal hide. It withdrew a small vial of the glowing green catalyst and offered it to Claire. Proof, it said simply. Claire hesitated before taking the vial, careful not to touch the contents. Thank you, without another word. Frankenstein turned and moved into the forest with surprising silence for its size, heading toward Thunder Canyon and the possibility of freedom beyond. Claire resumed her journey toward the highway, moving as quickly as the darkness allowed. Above, multiple helicopters now crisscrossed the sky, searchlights sweeping the forest. Behind her, the first sounds of combat erupted, punctuated by inhuman screams and the whoosh of flamethrowers. By dawn, Claire reached the highway, exhausted and battered but alive. A passing truck driver stopped to help, eyes widening at her appearance and wild story. While he called for assistance on his radio, Claire checked the tablet one final time. To her dismay, the screen had been damaged during her flight, the data corrupted beyond recovery. But she still had the vial of catalyst, carefully wrapped and secured in her pocket. Physical evidence of the truth. 3 days later, Claire sat in a sterile government office, facing skeptical officials who questioned her story repeatedly. Black Ridge National Park had been temporarily closed due to a containment situation involving dangerous research materials. The official story mentioned nothing of Frankenstein or transformed beings establishing territory in the wilderness. And you maintain this creature spoke to you? One official asked condescendingly. A patchwork monster with human intelligence. I've told you everything exactly as it happened, Claire replied firmly. The evidence was in the tablet. The conveniently damaged tablet, another official noted. Claire reached into her pocket, drawing out her final piece of evidence. The vial of integration catalyst, still glowing with its unnatural green light. The official's expressions changed immediately. Where did you get that? The lead investigator demanded, suddenly attentive. From Frankenstein, Claire said, placing the vial on the table. Test it. Then tell me I'm making this up. As they scrambled to secure the vial, Claire gazed out the window toward the distant mountains of Black Ridge. Somewhere in that vast wilderness, if they had survived the military assault, Frankenstein and its kind were establishing a new existence. Not fully human, not fully animal, but something evolution never intended. A new apex predator in a world that had forgotten how to fear the dark.